Hello, welcome everyone to the Universities at Shady Grove and Maryland Technology Council Industry Roundtable. This evening's topic is Bridging the Life Sciences Workforce Gap. I'm Ann Kademian, the Executive Director of the Universities at Shady Grove, or USG. This afternoon's event will be recorded. For those who don't know USG, we are Maryland's largest regional higher educational center, celebrating 20 years in the Montgomery County region. USG is 9 universities, 1 campus, with great results for our students. Our 9 university partners offer a combination of programs from undergraduate to graduate to certificate programs. While the degree and certificate programs at USG prepare students for a wide range of career possibilities, USG recognizes that the life sciences play a critical role in the regional economy and present a remarkable opportunity for innovation and growth. USG and its university partners support the life sciences workforce development by offering degree programs in new and innovative degrees, such as Translational Life Sciences and Technology, offered by UMBC, Biological Sciences, offered by the University of Maryland College Park, and Biocomputational Engineering, which will be starting in the fall, and also a master's degree in biotechnology, which is also offered by UMBC, and an MS in pharmaceutical sciences. There are many others that are on the way as well, that will all be offered in our new biomedical sciences and engineering building. I want to recognize and thank our industry partners for promoting the event. Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, the City of Gaithersburg Office of Economic Development, BioBuzz and Chris Rue, Rockville Economic Development Incorporated, the Frederick County Office of Economic Development. Thank you all for your support for this event. We have a dynamic group of industry leaders who promise to provide an insightful and intriguing conversation on the skills gap in the life sciences and approaches we can take to consider closing this gap. I have the pleasure to introduce our moderator for the roundtable this evening, who will then introduce our panel members. Marty Rosendale is the president and CEO of the Maryland Technology Council. An engineer turned microbiologist and industry leader, he is passionate about the human and business value of technology, life sciences, and biotechnology. He has led and built multiple companies and launched, branded, acquired, or commercialized multiple products and companies. Among his many distinguished leadership and service roles, he is a member of the USG Board of Advisors and a member of the Life Sciences Advisory Board in Maryland. Marty, welcome and take it away.
And thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it. And thank you for everything that you and USG do to support the workforce in life sciences throughout the state of Maryland. So welcome everybody this afternoon. It's great to see most of you on the screen this afternoon. We have a great discussion ahead of us, but first just a couple of housekeeping items. Your microphones should be muted, and ask that you keep them muted unless you're asking a question or have a reason to speak up, make a comment. The chat room will be monitored. Ann and I both will be monitoring the chat room. So if you have questions, please put them into the chat room. We'll be able to monitor that during the conversation this afternoon. Now, as Ann said, we've got an amazing panel today to talk about bridging the life sciences workforce gap. In Maryland, we've seen tremendous growth in life sciences, particularly cell and gene therapies, immunotherapies, protein science, and other aspects of life sciences and biotechnology. And with that, and with the commercialization of these companies, there's a tremendous need today for biomanufacturing. So we have 3 panelists with us today that have particular expertise in that space to talk with us about the workforce needs, the workforce requirements, and the workforce opportunities being presented by those industries. With us, we have Brian Stamper, the Director of Manufacturing for Kite Pharma, Aaron Vernon, Vice President of Technical Operations for TCR Squared Therapeutics, and Molly McLaughlin, the Chief Operating Officer for Vigene Biosciences. Welcome to you for joining us this afternoon. So to start with, what I'd like to do is ask each of you, if you would, to tell us a bit about yourself. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about how you got to this point in your career, because we're talking about workforce. And so it would be really interesting to hear what your path was to get to the point where you are in your career today. And then just take a few seconds and tell us what biomanufacturing is to you and your company, since you play such a prominent role in that space. And Molly, why don't we start with you?
Okay, great. So I'm Molly McLaughlin. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Vigene Biosciences. I have been in biotech all of my career and have had a lot of different types of roles in the commercial side, on the operations side, project management, et cetera. But I have worked mostly for startups and all in the contract manufacturing space. So I've been in the manufacturing side of biologics all of my career. So, and Vigene Bioscience is a gene and cell therapy contract manufacturing organization. So it was a logical, step for me to come in as the Chief Operating Officer, having had senior roles at many contract manufacturing organizations over the years.
Great. Molly, thank you. Brian, how about you next?
Sure. Thanks, Marty. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Happy to have a chance to have a conversation with you today. I'm Brian Stamper. As Marty said, I'm the Director of Manufacturing at Kite Pharma. We are just finishing construction. We actually are getting cells in the building here within a few days, for the first time at a new commercial manufacturing facility on the south side of Frederick, Maryland, in Urbana. I've been at Kite a little over 2 years. I've been overall in the industry over 20 years now. I started out in Indiana. I went to school in Indiana for a biochem degree, and then worked at Eli Lilly and Company for about nine and a half years. Half the time in process development, the other half the time in clinical manufacturing. I was a manufacturing tech on the floor for about 4 years, and that's where I did my first startup. From there, I moved to Maryland, to Frederick. I lived in Frederick County still, and where I worked at MedImmune for several years. I worked in the same place, the building that Aaron was designing and bringing up at the time. It's a biologics drug substance manufacturing facility for MedImmune, which is now part of AstraZeneca. And I was at Medi AZ again for about nine and a half years. 2/3 of the time in MS&T. The last third of the time in manufacturing. I ran manufacturing for one of the facilities there on the site. Then I went to Lonza for a very short time on the north side of Frederick for about 8 months to help with some program management there, and ran media manufacturing there for a short time before having the opportunity to come to Kite. And this is one I couldn't pass up. So it's the chance, similar to what Molly said, that the chance to work in cell therapy manufacturing is a wonderful thing. The direct impact on patients and our ability to really every time a batch comes in the door, it's got someone's name on it. With privacy, of course, protected, but it figuratively has someone's name on it, so that we're able to, and we take that responsibility very seriously. Every batch is a person, and we really thrive on that opportunity. So happy to be part of the session today. Great,
Brian, thank you. And I'm going to come back to your statement about an opportunity you couldn't pass up. So we'll get back to that later. Aaron, how about you and TCR Squared?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Aaron Vernon. I'm the Vice President of Technical Operations at TCR Squared. We, just like Kite, are an autologous cell therapy company, ostensibly headquartered in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but we are building a manufacturing facility right on the other side of Darnestown Road from the universities at Shady Grove, actually. I've been in the industry for 20 plus years with roles in engineering, supply chain, both site and global manufacturing as well. But I didn't start in the industry, and I think it's always worth noting. So I started out as a packaging equipment engineer for Johnson & Johnson, designing packaging equipment for baby shampoo and panty liners, and eventually decided to transition more into the biotech side of the space, and was able to move from a non-GMP into a GMP space, and started building facilities for full finish, for drug substance, as Brian said, and then I actually was lucky to come back to Maryland. I grew up in Montgomery County, so it was great about 16 years ago to come back, work for MedImmune, build that facility up in Frederick for them. And eventually, after years of helping to run supply chain there, I then went to Secampo Pharmaceuticals, which was in Rockville. And then after an acquisition, worked for Autolus Therapeutics, which is headquartered in the UK, but they'd started building a facility in Rockville. And after they had some restructuring earlier this year, I was able to join TCR Squared and bring the facility I had started with Autolus over there. So, and just as Brian said, this is people's lives and are in our hands when we deal with this. So it's critically important, and especially in cell therapy, you kind of work without a net. We don't have the luxury of being able to lose a batch, if you will, like you might in other parts of life sciences. So it's hyper critical to me, and it's out there helping to cure cancer for patients, which is a noble pursuit, I'd say. So.
Right. So Aaron, first of all, thank you for bringing TCR Squared to Maryland. It's greatly appreciated.
Thrilled to have been a help there.
Secondly, a point of clarification. You and Brian both, you mentioned autologous, Brian mentioned each batch represents a patient or a person. Could you just clarify for us the difference between autologous biomanufacturing and large batch biomanufacturing?
Sure. I'm happy to. So I'll take when Brian and I both worked at that facility, that MedImmune facility in Frederick. For a facility like that, we use engineered cells, mammalian cells, not human cells, that express a protein. And at a facility like that, we grow those cells in large volume, in large bioreactors. In a facility like that, it's up to 15,000 liters. And those cells express the protein we want. We then purify that protein, and that becomes our drug substance that then gets filled into vials, syringes, what have you. So that is there's no front end of the supply chain from a patient that supports that, and that's one where scaling is possible. We can treat many more patients over time as we continue to go to larger and larger bioreactors. For cell therapy, for autologous cell therapy, we start with patient material. We take patient material via apheresis. We'll take T cells or whole blood cells and bring those back to a manufacturing facility where we will then convert those cells, modify those cells to have a particular, to be able to target a particular tumor, or specifically a particular protein that's expressed on the tumor cell or in the tumor cell, and then we'll send those cells back, those modified cells back to that specific patient, where they'll then be dosed to that specific patient. Does that make some sense, Marty?
It does. Great. Thank you. I appreciate the
clarification.
I wasn't sure if everybody that's listening was aware of the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So Aaron, since you were the last one to introduce yourself, you get to be the first one to take a question here. So when thinking about the workforce and the workforce needs in biomanufacturing, what do you see as some of the most glaring competency deficiencies in the space?
I'll call them opportunities, maybe not deficiencies, but I think it's important. I think there's hard and soft skills that we would talk about. I think that there's definitely areas on the manufacturing shop floor, things like aseptic technique and tube welding in the lab, things like flow cytometry, which is not used generally in your normal biomanufacturing, but in our autologous manufacturing, it's used all the time. Absolutely, automation is one. There's never enough automation engineers, but I would say generally there oftentimes we'll find people that there's just not enough kind of GMP 101 capabilities out there. I think that's one that oftentimes is not coming out of school, or unless you've worked in the industry, you won't have had that experience or expertise. But I think one that there's always of interest to me from when looking at technical organizations are some of the soft skills in terms of management. So things like managing teams and conflict resolution and delegating, because more often than not in technical disciplines, What we do is we take the most technically gifted person and then we throw them in charge of a team of people without having trained them on how to do that. And when you're talking about a large manufacturing organization, that management, that tactical management and leadership of day-to-day tasks is hypercritical, especially when you're a manufacturing facility that may be working in multiple shifts a day or in a week. So those are kind of the things that come to my mind.
So it's not just biology.
It's not just biology, not at all.
All right, cool. So Molly, what are your thoughts? You know, Aaron mentioned automation. He mentioned GMP. He mentioned management skills. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think those are all important. The management skill part is critical in just being able to grow a new organization. And I do think that is something that we don't focus on as much as the hard science skills. And so to get somebody who has leadership in a science field where they're doing process development and doing some troubleshooting and looking at new potential processes for streamlining, optimizing, increasing yield, getting more potency, more efficacy of the drug. You just don't, being able to guide and lead junior scientists, you just don't see that kind of leadership skill as prevalent as I think that you do in other industries. And so I think that is definitely a gap. But I think just your standard aseptic, as he spoke of, and also the being able to just have this like compliance attitude where everything you do has to be compliant. Everything you do has to be exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and that's something that people off the street don't have, and so that is something you have to teach. And GMP is way different than research, and understanding that you have to follow the process, the batch record. You have to be compliant. You have to use checks and balances, and so those are also skills that I think that are not prevalent. And so that there is a gap usually when you hire somebody who has the great science possibly, but maybe doesn't have that kind of compliance, understanding, and expertise.
So Molly, you and Aaron both mentioned GMP, and one of our participants also put in the chat room another comment about the importance of GMP. Maybe to talk a little bit more. I mean, why is it so critical? Why is that experience so critical?
For good manufacturing practices, it has to do with the consistency of your product. So being able to produce a product time and time again in a consistent manner, where you are following the batch record specifically. There's no variation. There's no coloring outside the lines kind of thing, where it just has to be a consistent manufacture so that the specifications are met every time and time again, so that your product is consistent and your product is safe for the patients that it's being dosed to. So it really is about consistent product and safe product.
Great, thank you. So Brian, it hasn't been that long ago you were hiring construction workers, and now you're about to get your first cells delivered and start biomanufacturing. What do you see as some of the deficiencies in competencies?
Yeah, I think obviously Aaron and Molly nailed it. You have to make sure that you have people in a manufacturing environment understand GMPs and compliance and those types of things. Both for product safety, patient safety, as well as compliance, right? So when the agency, the FDA, walks on the door, if you're not compliant, that's a great way to get yourself shut down. So it's really important to make sure we understand that. I'll take the opportunity to put a plug in for the Life Science Advisory Board Workforce Development Task Force. I see Joe Sanchez on the line, other people on the line, including Aaron, who are part of that. And we've gone through some pretty significant efforts, and we're getting into the solutioning phase now to really identify those gaps and what can we do to make sure we have the region is set up and well positioned to for the future as companies like TCR2 and Square and other companies come in that will already support all that industry growth. So those types of things are really exciting. And one thing we found with that task force is there, as Aaron mentioned, it's not just the science, it's not just the technical aspects, but really the soft skills to make sure people can communicate well and people can have create an inclusive environment, so you can have a good, strong, diverse workforce that can respond to any situation. And so I like a lot of those skills are important, as well as all the GP skills and technical skills. And one of the things we talked about in the task force actually was business acumen is an important one as well. So if you can't, to keep it real simple, if you can't balance the books, you're not going to stay in business very long. So those types of things you obviously have to be able to do as well. And so there's like you said, it's not just biology, right? It's not just chemistry. So there's a lot of aspects to running a business. You have to manage a warehouse well. All these various things have to be done correctly to be a successful operation.
That's great. I can see Ann taking copious notes as we're talking about this. That's fantastic. So, when we're talking to companies outside of the region, when we talk about the value of coming here, we talk about the federal laboratories, we talk about the amazing universities that we have here, we talk about the campus at USG and the other companies. Recently, I was in a conversation with one of our technology CEOs, and he told me that he also wants to see competition because competitors build workforce. How important is it to you and in your company to locate the business near these kinds of other organizations, the universities, the other laboratories, other sources of workforce development? And Brian, since you're on the screen, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm sure just like, I'm sure Molly and Aaron have had the same experience. I mean, Kite, shopped around to see where should we put our next manufacturing facility, what makes sense. We knew we wanted something on the East Coast for distribution purposes. So Maryland was obviously not the only region we looked at, but what really drew us to this area was the availability of a technical and highly trained workforce. And we, like Aaron and I talked about, both came from AZ, right? So it's something where we were trained up within the industry, not cell therapy. This has been a new adventure for me, but it's but something where we understand manufacturing, we understand how to have a successful operation. So I think that's a huge plus, and that's good for the leaders of the site, but also I think the other thing is we've got schools like USG and Montgomery College and Frederick Community College and University of Maryland system, all these various great educational systems in the area. So we have a pipeline. So we have to create that pipeline so it can be sustainable over time. And that's also a big reason why Joe and I and others are very excited about this development task force, because we have an opportunity to influence that and make sure that we've got, again, setting ourselves up well for the future.
Great, thank you. So Molly, you're relatively new to the area, but Vigene has been here a while. How important has it been to Vigene to be located in proximity to those other organizations?
Yeah, no, I think it's been critical to the growth of the company. So Vigene, I'm not sure if everyone knows the history, actually started out as a research reagent company. So it was really producing reagents for gene and cell therapy research and selling predominantly to the universities and the other companies that are in this region. And so that is really where we got our start, was really being, selling to all of these types of companies. And so from there, we expanded into doing the contract manufacturing for viral vectors and plasmid DNA. But it makes, it is so critical to be so close to, companies that are in this space for ease of just collaboration on projects, and also for our recruitment for the labor force, because as you start up, and that's what my role was to get the GMP facility up and running, and recruiting and training and getting the operators functioning. It was, it's hard if you're, starting up, you don't have, you can't borrow from, history. You have to borrow from other people's history. And so that's what we've been doing, is recruiting people who are either free or underemployed, or people that are looking for better and bigger opportunities. So it has been very important to our growth, because our growth rate has been very rapid. And we're going to continue. We just we just got a new facility that's going to be doing commercial manufacturing. So we're going to probably triple in the next probably 5 years. So having the ability to recruit people that have the talented have the science, have the experience, is going to be critical for that growth.
Great. Aaron, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I'd say is one of the keys to having the right areas, that right critical mass, is it makes it easier for people to make life decisions about where they're going to work, right? You know, not just people, you know, people in Maryland who are looking to come into the industry, or students, but also even you know, mid-career people who are trying to look for that next job. Having an area where there are several large manufacturers where you could apply those same skill sets, for example, in whether it be cell gene therapy or vector manufacturing or just bioprocessing, makes it a lot easier to make those life choices. And you know, Brian pointed out that we've worked at the same place. Well, for years, MedImmune Human Genome Sciences did the lion's share of the lifting in many ways in helping to build the workforce around here. And that kind of diaspora of people out has been really useful to the industry. And then growing up companies around here as well, to the point where, yes, Boston's still number one. Yes, New Jersey, or South San Francisco, and then the New York, New Jersey are 2 and 3. But I think, you know, clearly Maryland's hot on our heels, because we're finally, in particular, due to this critical mass of manufacturing, going to be catching up and trying to meet our goals of being number 3 in the very near future.
So Aaron, you know, Brian mentioned the LSAB MTC Life Sciences Workforce Working Group, and that work that is being done there. And one of the early findings, if you will, is that there's a disconnect between industry and the universities where the talent is being trained. Just kind of a follow-on question here. How important is that communication between the industry and academia in an area like this?
I think it's hypercritical. I think long gone are the time where companies could afford the time and the effort to just say, yeah, we're going to assume anyone who comes in has no skill sets at all, and we're going to take the time and money to train them up completely, because that's really difficult. And us working directly with the academia to help craft curricula that train people to come and have skills already in the workforce is a great way to do it, and something that I would expect students to be really excited about. You know, going in and essentially being trained for a particular job while in college, you know, increasing the likelihood of you having a job right out of school. That's a big plus. So it just makes for, in the end, there was a huge inefficiency in the system because of a lack of communication. And as Brian said, with the help of that entire workforce, we're trying to do a better job of aligning. And there's already been some great work that's been done. But I think part of it is maybe resourcing that a little bit more, you know, upping the capacity of Collins's program, for example, to greater than 10 people at a time. Things like that. So we're working through that, and I've been very heartened by those conversations, because we all realize we're in this together, and we're gonna have to come out of this together. That one group, one company, one kind of part of the ecosystem can't do it all themselves.
Right. Molly or Brian, any additional comments about the communication between industry and the universities?
Yeah, sure. I can jump in, Molly, then if you want to finish this up. But no, I think that's an obvious one, right? So I think there's a lot of passion, but we have to have that communication to have a sustainable workforce pipeline. But I love the passion, energy from folks like Collins and Anik and others, you know, from the area, who really want to make sure that we're partnering well to create an environment where students can come out of school and be successful right away. So that's just going to, you know, keep the cycle going, right? So that the more growth we have, and the more you know, students we can have come out of the universities already, the more opportunities there are for other companies to come here. So it'll just build upon itself. So I think it's a wonderful thing. And as Aaron was saying, you know, it's pretty darn expensive to train people up. If you're going to take 6-9 months to train somebody up, that's just not financially feasible. It's quite difficult to be competitive if you're going to take that approach. So things like partnering, and we recently announced we're starting an apprentice program with Frederick Community College, which we're very excited about. So we're looking forward to getting our first couple of students in later this year, just to get that off the ground, at least for Kite. So there's loads of opportunities to grow from what we're doing, but there's been a lot of great work up to this point. And really for me, the best part about it is the passion and energy that people have to really want to make this happen.
Molly, anything to add?
I think the only thing I would add is just that, biomanufacturing is not a spigot. Like you hire somebody and, it is a long time to get them trained and functioning and able to operate on their own. So it's not a spigot that you turn on. So to have something where they have at least a base of knowledge on biomanufacturing, on equipment, they've seen a bioreactor, they've seen a centrifuge, they've seen a TFF skid, they've seen an ACTA skid. That kind of just base knowledge is super valuable when you're recruiting somebody who's right out of school, to get them functioning and quickly. So yeah, I think that being able to give that feedback back to the academia world, that this is what trends in manufacturing and industry, and this is where we're focused on, this is where we're going, this is some of the new types of techniques, and you should be teaching your student body these types of techniques.
So Molly, you and Brian both mentioned the time it takes to train up a new employee to get somebody fully up to speed. And I would imagine the last thing that you want to do is go through that kind of effort and then have either Aaron or Brian steal that employee from you.
Yeah, leave my people be. No, it happens, and it does happen. People poach from each other, but that's okay, because I think that it just helps people with their career path. If I don't have a career path for them, they'll still have an opportunity elsewhere. So I think that that's fine.
So what kind of programs do you have in place to improve employee retention? How do you avoid that?
So I think the biggest thing is listening to your employees, making sure that you have your mentorship and coaching throughout your organization, making sure that your managers are spending the time that's appropriate with their subordinates, and give them feedback and listen to their concerns, listen to what their ambitions are, what they want to be doing in their future, and help lay out, like, okay, so in 5 years you want to be team lead, or you want to be manager, or you want to be director, whatever. But start setting in potential opportunities for them to train, to have a leadership role, to also maybe do some broadening, so that get on projects where they can get experience working with different departments that they're not used to. So that just helps them build their portfolio, and whether they stay with Vigene or whether they go to another company, I think that helps benefit, because the stronger employee, a more competent employee, benefits the company.
Right. So Brian, Molly told me that she's coming after all those employees that you just trained. So what are you doing to retain them?
Well, let me say first that I think us poaching from each other is frankly good for everybody. I think, as Molly said, it helps the employee with their career pathways and development. But I think it also reminds us of the importance of making ourselves better, and creating the right culture in which people are going to be successful and remain engaged. And ultimately, the more that happens, I think patients win, right? So I think the three of us have the great opportunity to work in cell therapy, where, again, if you have the best people and you got people really engaged and want to deliver, the patients win, and that's ultimately where it's at. So I think that's why I say I think it makes us all better. So I think that will help us have a higher batch success rate, reach more patients, find a way to add capacity without spending a ton of money, those types of things. So from a retention standpoint, though, I will say I think it's all about engagement. And creating an environment where people are energized and fired up and want to come into work. You're going to have your good days and bad days, of course, everyone does. But they want someone who they believe in what we're about. They believe in coming in and curing cancer effectively and saving patients' lives. So it's something, if you create that engagement, create that environment where people are free to be themselves, it's an inclusive environment, then that really goes a long ways, I think, in employee retention.
So Aaron, as you're building out the Maryland division of TCR Squared, what are you thinking with respect to employee retention?
I think that Molly and Brian, kind of nailed it. I in particular, when we talk at making sure that we build our organization with a view to the path that people need to take or will want to take. be able to inform them about what those possibilities are. I always say I try never to hire someone only thinking about the job that they're about to take. I try to think about the next job and the job after that, and make sure we have that conversation when we do it, so that it's clear to me as a manager and them as an employee about what those pathways could be, so they get a sense about what they need to work towards to be able to achieve those goals, and make sure that cascades all the way down to the shop floor. And kind of, I know it's maybe it's an outdated term, but kind of that career ladder, career progression, being clear to people what those skills that are needed, what opportunities can be. But I will say, that the key here in many ways, this goes back to the prior question about being, at a critical mass of companies, is if we can keep those trained people in Maryland, if they go from my facility they go from TCR Squared to Kite to Vigene or back again, it helps us in general, because it happens all the time that people go away for a couple of years, they come back, they get new skills, they get a different perspective on things, and maybe they get the opportunity elsewhere that we couldn't give them within the company at the time. So to that point, you do have to expect that there will be turnover, but if we try to keep it in the area, it makes it a little bit better. But yeah, I think those good conversations about development, engaging people, and making sure that they understand that there's hopefully that there's alignment between where we are as a company, where we are as an organization, and what their goals are, but also being honest and accepting that there's times when that isn't the case, and being supportive of them to help them find whatever that next path may be, whether it be within our company or outside of it.
Great. So Aaron, Maryland is a very diverse state with respect to the population, and having a diverse leadership team, having a diverse workforce provides a competitive advantage in a diverse world. What role does diversity play in, as you're recruiting, building, and growing the organization?
Yeah, I mean, diversity. I mean, we all know diversity is really important in terms of making sure that our organizations are representative of the populations we serve, making sure we get different points of view, et cetera. But when I think in terms of the talent kind of gap, I always think about it in terms of diversity of kind of background and diversity of location, so to speak, where it happens all the time in recruiting, where we're always looking in the same places and we're getting the same types of people with the same backgrounds, the same expertise, et cetera. And I think in particular, when you're in a supply constrained situation, we need to do a better job of finding, finding populations, how diverse populations, however we define it, and engage them. If that's going to different universities, going to different other industries where people can build skills that might not be GMP, but they work really well. It's funny, Molly mentioned she grew up in a military family, and I am in the military, right? Military veterans are spectacular in manufacturing. It is absolutely, when I talked earlier about that management, that is absolutely core to anyone who's been in the military. We can teach them GMPs, but I know that they'll be great at managing, and so we have to think a little bit differently and how we look for things. So that's kind of how I think about diversity.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Molly, what are your thoughts about diversity in the workforce?
I do think that it actually brings a lot of value to an organization to have diversity of not only race, religion, gender, but also people that are from non-US areas, right? So I think that it just brings a lot of character to a company. I think it brings, it helps challenge people too, especially in the areas of, just learning about it, the paradigm that people come from. So I do think that it is important. It's funny that you say the military part. So I not only am a military brat, but I spent most of my adult life in the Army Reserves. And so, the Army is a cross section of the United States, and people from every walk I think that that kind of flavor is something that I love about Vigene, is that we kind of have that. We have people from Africa, Asia, Europe, all over the United States. And it just really, I just really enjoy it because I think it provides just so much more of a interesting workplace. And I think that, people that, whether they're, high school graduates or PhD MDs within our organization, I just think that it really, I don't know, it just brings a really good flavor to the culture of the company.
Great, thank you. So Brian, I want to ask you the same question, but with a little bit different twist on it, because someone pointed out in the chat room, is basically asking the question: Do you ever look earlier? Do you ever access or inform younger students, younger people, with respect to building the workforce? But I would think in this case it would also apply to building a more diverse workforce. And I know this topic has come up in the Life Sciences Workforce Working Group. So I thought I would come to you with that question.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I'll say this. So we have done some of that. I think we have a lot of opportunity to do a lot more of that, and perhaps do it more effectively and definitely more scalable function. So I think, and one of the comments in there is that a lot of people, coming out of middle school, high school, that the kids and their parents and their counselors and even the teachers don't really know what biotech's about, or what a life sciences career could be, what the opportunities are. And so I think there's one of the key findings, actually the key opportunity statement, as it were, coming out of the task force for workforce development is making that link. There's plenty of smart people out there. That's not the issue. There's plenty of students graduating college with science degrees. That's not the issue at all levels, frankly. But what the issue is they don't think about coming into the biotech industry necessarily, and definitely not into biomanufacturing. And that's where we have the opportunity to go early and go often, as it were, to go help these kids understand the opportunities and the type of career paths that are out there for them, and what they can do. I know when I was a biochem undergrad, I was thinking med school the whole way, right? So that's what everyone's always thinking. And so I couldn't be happier with the career path I have. It's the best job I've ever had. But it's something that I think there's definitely an opportunity out there. It's a great call out.
Yeah, I think that's great. So often we look back and there was that one teacher or that one person that pointed us in a certain direction. I think it's so important with the young students that we get out there and we show them what all the opportunities are, that they understand what their choices are, so they can do what they're going to be the most passionate about. So, Brian, you mentioned earlier a 6 to 9 month training process. That seems pretty extensive. What do those training programs look like?
Yeah, so let me be clear. So 6 to 9 months is too long. So that's if we're doing that, we're not doing our job very well, either in training or recruiting. So really, what the rule of thumb we use is about 3 months, really, before you become a productive, member of the group, depending on your role. Some are faster, some are longer, depending on what you're doing. But in general, that's about right. And really what that training entails is, I think Molly mentioned earlier, right, is understanding the GMPs and just the basics and fundamentals, make sure everyone has that basic foundational understanding of what it means to work in a regulated environment in a GMP facility. So you start with that. There's the other aspects of training, things like safety, make sure we don't want anyone to get hurt on site by any means. And so that's always a high focus for us. Really every day we talk about safety in the workplace and the manufacturing environment. And then you get in more of the technical aspects. And so if someone's coming in as say a new student or a new person into the workforce out of school, then we'll talk to them about what's the technical aspects and what is the organization setup, how does the company work, some of just the basic stuff that they may not have a good understanding of. And then we can kind of set them free once we feel like we've trained them up enough and they've demonstrated they can do the work on their own. With someone looking over their shoulder, then we'll set them free to go out and manufacture. So again, I think as both Aaron and Molly said, especially, in all types of manufacturing, but especially cell therapy autologous, where if you screw up a batch, you most likely have led to someone's death. And so it's a situation where you just can't do that. You just cannot do that. And so, we're very cautious with our training and our systems to make sure that we're setting people up for success here on the manufacturing floor, just so we can serve patients in the right way.
All right, cool. So Aaron, I guess you just recently brought TCR squared to Maryland. So I guess I should ask you first, are you training anybody yet?
Nope, not yet. I'm looking to hire my first employee for the facility this week, but I haven't had to start training them yet.
So when that time comes, what will training look like for you?
So it'll look similar to what Molly and Brian have, but one thing that I've used in the past to good effect, and that we will use at TCR Squared, is is to try to maximize the amount of opportunities to train. Usually, what I'll use call simulators, using training simulators, where there are so many potential decisions and things that could go right or wrong at every process step for us. In a prior life, I would see a training regimen that would just be you would watch 3 batches, and then you'd be responsible for 3 batches, and we'd call it a day and say you're qualified. You will have barely scratched the surface in all the possible iterations of decisions you had to make and interventions. So using systems where we essentially fake, if you will, what's going on in the within the piece of equipment or in a bioreactor or what have you, and allow people to make decisions and have the system respond appropriately. It's not unlike what pilots do with simulators. First time a pilot flies a 777 is not actually in the cockpit of a 777. They're gonna have logged hours and hours of time in a simulator where they've dealt with issues in the plane, et cetera, before they get into it live. Those are the kind of things that we need to do. And as Brian said, 3 months is where we're aiming towards. And it's not just 3 months in terms of time, it comes down to quality as well. So we want these people, it's not like we want to put them on the shop floor and they're barely good enough after 3 months, and they still take another 6 months to get up to speed where they're truly qualified. We want to qualify them to the standards we want in that fast time. So those are the kind of approaches that we would look at to maximize the opportunity for people to have that hands-on work before we actually send them off into the world with live patient cells.
Great, thank you. So Molly, what about Vigene? Is the training similar to what Brian and Aaron are talking about?
It is, but we do. They work on one process consistently. We might do 20 different processes for 20 different types of AAV or lentivirus or adenovirus, or then we have our plasmids as well. So it is a lot more diverse. So it is the basic skills of each unit of operation. There's the aseptic, there's the gowning, and then there's learning how to run the equipment. But then there's also the aspect of understanding the changes in the process based on the type of virus vector that we're manufacturing. So, we have to train on each of the batch records and each of the processes as well. So it's a little bit more complicated because we have, in any given month, we might manufacture, 5 or 6 different types of products with 5 or 6 different types of processes. Although we have a platform process, everybody's viral vector responds a little bit different in the platform. So we have to be able to make sure that we're training the operators on the new processes as well. So it's a little bit, it's kind of phased, but it's the unit of operations, and then it's the process science as well.
Great, thank you. So I just want to remind everybody that we will be getting to the Q&A session in just a few minutes. So put your questions into the chat room if you would. And also, it looks like the big storm that was passing through has hit us. So if we start having some technical difficulties, I will apologize in advance. So Molly, you talked about GMP. Brian and Aaron have talked about the speed to get people trained. Would there be value in a mock GMP training center where people could make mistakes, they could fail in safety, fail in a safe environment, and then get some of this training before they ever show up at your doorstep?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that would be amazing. It would put them a couple months into the training program. I would think to be able to have that kind of experience where they're actually running a full process with all of the unit of operations, with all of the types of equipment, whether it's cell culture or fermentation. So I think that, yeah, it would be very valuable to have an operator start with that kind of base knowledge already. And if there was a local facility that does this kind of training for potential employees, that would be huge.
So now someone's going to come knocking on your door and ask if you would support that, right?
I know. I think I've already had that conversation, but yeah, I know.
All right, Brian, what are your thoughts around a mock GMP training facility?
I'm shocked that Collins didn't take himself off mute here when that question came up. But yeah, there's definitely there's great value there, right? So at Kite, we actually partnered with Hood College, a small private college here in Frederick, smaller, I should say, private college here in Frederick, and we've basically equipped a lab on their campus with cell therapy manufacturing equipment, where we use that to train up our own staff. I have been doing that, and we're still doing that while we're waiting on the facility construction to be complete, and then also we're partnering with the staff there and the administration there then to work that into the curriculum, right? And so that way we've got students coming out of Hood College who already have some sense of what cell therapy manufacturing looks like, just on a generic basis, right? We have to watch out for IP, of course, but just to make sure that they come out with a degree and say, yes, I've seen this equipment, or I've seen that equipment, and it makes it again easier for them to be competitive when interviewing for roles, and it helps us a lot as well. When they come to the door, we can speed along that 3 months training. So no, absolutely. And I think again, you asked earlier about the partnership, between the importance of communication between academia and industry, and there's a prime example, right, where with what Collins is doing, what other people are doing, there's great opportunities to build from that, to really set something up that can be really special and really helpful to the area and the region, to create this pipeline talent.
And what about industry support for something like that? Is that industry's role? Would industry support that?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously, you have to have the right balance on those types of things. But absolutely, I think industry is very interested in seeing this type of thing be successful. One of the things I've heard talk about a lot is school. Universities will say, "Oh, we're going to create this certification program for that, a certification program for that," and that's great. And those can be really helpful. But I think one of the things you have to watch out for in that environment is that if you create the certificate and it's just from this one school and it's a specific thing that was invented, it may not be terribly meaningful, frankly, to a lot of companies. And so I think it's really important to have those conversations with industry and really, frankly, across different academic institutions to harmonize on some of those things. So that way, when someone comes out and says, I have a certificate in aseptic processing or something, whatever we're going to call it, people have a pretty good understanding of what that means. And that way it makes it easy for us to say, okay, all right, we have a pretty good understanding that this person knows how to do this and this and this. It makes it easier for us to recruit and have the conversations with the potential employees.
Right. Thank you. Aaron, what are your thoughts around a mock GMP training facility?
I'm all for it as well. I know that the way I look at it, and we talked earlier about working with academia to kind of build some of these things into the curriculum, which I think is important, but I look this more as an opportunity for either for students, for graduates, if you will, people mid-career or still early career, to be able to get some training done. As we said, it sounds great, but trying to get someone from another industry and informing them that you're going to spend all of your time in a bunny suit with hairnet and beard cover or what have you. Those are things that'd be really nice for them to know. And when we talk about some of the basic things in terms of safety and GMP and some of the standard unit operations, those are absolutely things that are transferable company to company, and they really would not only shave some time off of people, but make those people far more valuable to companies like us. So I'm absolutely for it. I do think it is a place where industry and academia can work together to build something. So we're not, and just in the same way that Brian made the comment about if you've got a single certification from one school in one area, it could have limited utility. Not having only one company have to do it, each company do their own thing with academia doesn't really help, right? In the end, it might help that company, but they're carrying a disproportionate amount of weight, and you pull that support from multiple companies, we will have an easier time to lift more people up quicker. So I'm all for it.
Great, thank you. So we're at the Q&A part of the presentation tonight. So I want to remind everybody once again to put your questions into the chat room. Since we have a couple of minutes, we're a few minutes ahead of schedule. I'm going to take the moderator's prerogative and ask the first question. And Aaron, I'll start with you. So the three of you represent some of the most technologically sophisticated manufacturing facilities probably in the world. How do you keep up with the technology once you get it built, once the plant is built? And then how do you keep your workforce up with the technology as well?
That's a really good question, Marty. I think I'll take it. I'll be the engineer for a moment and just note because we're still in design and construction of our facility. The design and construction of our facility is intended to be, I won't say future-proof because then it'll come back and bite me in 10 years, but as flexible as is humanly possible to deal with the changes in technology that we will be using over time. I am very confident that in the lifetime of that facility, that we will not be using, towards the end of that lifetime, we will not be using the same technology we use today to manufacture autologous cell therapies. There is an absolute 0% chance I'll be using the same manufacturing platform in 15 years. Or our company, whether I'll be there in 15 years is a different question. So one, we set it up strategically, both in the design of the facility and intent, because we're already working on the next version of our manufacturing platform with different technology, et cetera. So those are two important things. But then it comes down to, I know this is going to sound weird, but it's not the manufacturing technology is our problem to worry about. The science, so to speak, isn't my problem to worry about. That's what our process development team, that's what our research teams are for. Our job is to build the best darn operational engine we possibly can build, and it's flexible and adaptable enough to do this thing. So I just want to be clear there. It won't be because of cool, as much as cool science, but cool kind of operational technology that we use. But one, having that idea, two, having areas and intent to train on that and bring that speed, and then obviously to kind of surveil and keep an eye on those things is important. But I think what it does, Marty, is it changes the profile of the people that you're looking for. You're not looking for someone to do the exact same thing for the next 40 years. You want people as much that have skills today, but I really want people who've shown they can gain more skills and continue to grow skills and have that growth mindset and continue to improve. Those are going to be the things that will help set our organization up for success, to be adaptable and flexible with the new technologies, new science, but whatever. And in fact, to me, that works, whether it be a technological driver or just a business driver that we have to deal with. So that's how we're doing it. But you always have to have that, one eye looking 5-10 years down the road, and one eye looking, 5-10 months in front of you, so to speak, or days right in front of you, just to make sure that we are delivering what we need, but knowing that that's going to change, and just having that mindset helps set us up for success going forward.
Thanks. So Brian, you've got a brand new facility. I'm sure Kite wrote you a blank check to put in the best technology. So how do you keep up with that, and how do you keep your workforce up with the technology? And I'm going to ask a third question. Is there a role for the universities and colleges to help you keep the workforce up with that technology?
Okay. Yeah, blank check. That sounds pretty great. Never seen one of them. So similar to what Aaron said, from an engineering perspective, we intentionally designed our facility. We went into this knowing we don't know what's going to come in the future, right? So we intentionally designed our facility to be flexible, so that we can move walls around, we can change room classifications, we can do all types of things. We actually have this massive shell space, a pretty good sized shell space in a wing of the building where it's not finished out at all, and so we can make it anything we want. It's completely wide open. The only thing we did for is make sure we have enough utilities to support it once it does turn on. So there's, I think the key from a facility standpoint is flexibility, as Aaron was talking about. From a workforce perspective, it's really making sure that as people come in and you're hiring people, looking for people, recruiting people, training people, that you say you're looking for the kind of people who can be agile and be flexible and kind of roll with it. So when the next generation of cell therapy comes in or whatever comes in, 5 years from now, that it's a workforce that can adjust, and you create an environment where and that's we go about 8 questions ago we talked about diversity and an inclusive environment. So that's where that diversity really starts to pay off. I think that one of the big benefits of that is you have the great benefit of different perspectives and different ideas and different ways of thinking that can help you to adjust to the new situations and still have a successful operation, no matter what you're trying to do, no matter what's in front of you. So I think as we look for workforce, the growing workforce, those are the types of things to consider. And you asked about partnership with universities. I think that's a definite. So again, I'll revert back to the lab at Hood College. We intentionally designed, it's a very simple lab, very simple operation, thankfully. And so we were able to create that and make that be a very, very, very flexible space. And so we can put any kind of equipment that we want, really. And so it's an opportunity. So as today's technology goes by the wayside and I don't have my BlackBerry anymore, I'm ready to move on to something else, then I'm ready to throw that away and put in whatever's the new shiny thing. So it's I think having a flexible both facility and operation as well as workforce is the way to go. And then again, I'll echo the same comment again, just maintaining the open lines of communication and partnership between academic and industry is a great way to get there.
Great, thank you. So Molly, I know you have a hard stop and you're going to have to drop in a few minutes. What are your thoughts about keeping up with technology and the role of the universities and colleges in that process?
So I think for us as a contract manufacturer, a lot of our innovative technology comes from our customer base. So we're constantly being challenged for new opportunities for different kinds of products, different processes, different just new innovative discoveries that are in our space. And so I think that keeps us on our toes. I do have process development and I'm at manufacturing science and technology report into me as well. And so that is one of the areas that we're constantly developing is, really looking at the landscape and seeing what new developments are out there, whether it's going and doing the literature reviews. And a lot of that is being supported by the universities, but a lot of our innovation comes from our client base and our customer base, especially, from the research reagents all the way through the contract manufacturing.
Great, thank you. So Anne, it looks like we've got quite a few questions in the chat room. Where would you like to start?
Well, why don't we start with this question? There's a number of questions here about top priorities for hiring, top skill sets for hiring, or general education levels for entrance into the industry. There's a question here from Dave Sandstrom, who heads up the biological sciences program, and he's saying, they teach a lot of people. They teach people, future doctors, dentists, PTs, including students interested in biotech. So in that broad curriculum, what are some things that they ought to be emphasizing? And I'll combine that with another question from Joe Sanchez, which says, what are some of the basic educational and experiential experience that the industry is looking for entry level? And what's the value of networking as part of that? So maybe our panelists could each take different parts of that, but people are interested in these kind of entry level skill sets that stand out, maybe experience that stands out, and maybe the role of networking and getting a foothold in the industry right off the bat. So I don't know, Aaron, if you want to kick us off, that'd be great.
I'd love to. Yeah, these are some questions that we've tackled a little bit talking the workforce, our kind of workforce planning group. I would say first, when I want to talk about experience and education, I think that's an important thing for people to understand. I've literally been in organizations where you had scientists who said, well, we can't have anyone in manufacturing who doesn't have a PhD. Clearly, they've never run a manufacturing facility because they've never tried to get PhDs to work on a shop floor for 8 to 10 hours a day. That our goal in life on the manufacturing side is to reduce the education required over time. So when we're starting up a facility, it might be that we want people, that we're looking for people with more experience, more education, because they're doing a little bit more kind of multiple roles, right? I want my manufacturing people to have maybe a little bit better science background because they're providing a little bit of technical support as we start up, as we're dealing with the complexity there. Over time, my goal is absolutely positively to always reduce the requirements for those roles and get towards associate's degrees where possible within any facility, getting down to just a high school education where we can. But I think part of it is always it has to match where companies are in terms of life cycle. Starting there may be more difficult, but that's always our goal. And again, people, I would also say we spend a lot of time worrying about either degrees or time in school, as opposed to I'll say maybe not the quality, but the applicability of that training. So if we've got academic programs that are more applicable to the work we're doing, and they happen to be 2-year programs, I'm still probably going to wind up with better people on the shop floor than someone who has never set foot on a manufacturing floor, doesn't know what a bioreactor looks like other than in a textbook, and they happen to have a 4-year degree. So I'd say there. The only other thing I'll make comment to, and then I'll let Molly and Brian add, is when you talk about networking, and this is a work stream we're trying to fix. It's all well and good, but our goal in life is to make it easier for people to that connection between companies and the people looking for it. So I don't like the idea that people, it flies in the face of that kind of, in particular the diversity inclusion we talk about, that the only way to get a job in an industry like this is having some connection, et cetera. So we're working towards things like trying to have a clearinghouse for life sciences jobs in Maryland, or at least a common place where people can post those things. So people who are looking for jobs have one place to go. So again, trying to always reduce the education needed, which opens up the potential workforce, trying to reduce the barriers to people getting into the industry, either through training, education, or just in communication flow. That's how we're going to resolve this talent gap, because if we're only, we're kind of making it difficult for people to get in, and only expecting a certain level of education, that supply doesn't exist, and we're never going to be able to staff these new facilities in the area. So we have to think a little bit more creatively, I'd say.
Thanks,
So
Erin.
I'll add,
Yeah,
can I
Molly,
add
go
a few comments, and then I do need to scoot. I agree with you. I don't think you need a PhD to be on the manufacturing floor. I would actually prefer not to have most of my PhDs on the manufacturing floor. I'd rather have them in the lab doing, generation of processes or generation of discoveries. But I do think I agree with you that although getting somebody with a 4-year degree that has the basic understanding of science would be really great, it's not necessary. I'd rather have somebody with a good attitude, that has a strong work ethic, that is a good team player, who shows up to work, shows up on time, has had a shower that day, et cetera. I mean, that well over a degree. And I know that may not promote having the collaboration with academia, but I think that you don't necessarily need to have the advanced degrees, especially for the manufacturing floor. So with that, thank you for having me on the panel, and I've really enjoyed the discussion.
Thanks so much.
Molly, thank you. Ann?
Yeah, I don't know, Brian, if you wanted to add to that question about networking and about entry-level skills.
Oh yeah, entry-level skills. So yeah, I would agree. So if we're going to focus on entry-level manufacturing tech, for example, definitely. I mean, so I'll give an example. 2 of my manufacturing supervisors have high school degrees. They have no education beyond high school. And what they do have, they're supervised because they have great experience. And they actually came up and they at other biotech companies in the area, and then they started out in the cleaning crew, and then worked their way on to be a manufacturing tech, entry-level tech, and then went on their way. And now they're supervisors, and they're doing really, really well, and they're really highly successful supervisors. Frankly, and great teams. So I don't. It's definitely not. It's definitely not something where you have to have a 4-year degree to get in the door. And I mentioned earlier, we're doing this apprentice program with FCC, right? So things like that is a great way to kind of also, get someone in here who maybe it's someone who's fresh out of high school, maybe it's someone looking to do a career change. I will say, my wife graduated from Hagerstown Community College just a few weeks ago with an X-ray radiography program. So she's doing a career change. And so you'll get all kinds of non-traditional students as well as kids fresh out of high school through the community colleges. I think there's great opportunities there. And so it's I think it's something where and Molly really nailed it, right? So you want someone with work ethic and attitude and can communicate and be part of a team and be open-minded and can learn and be teachable and all these things. And so that's where you're really going to get your best manufacturing techs and potentially future supervisors and managers and directors is coming in with that kind of attitude and work ethic. I would agree.
That's awesome. That's so helpful. I'm going to call on Gerald, who has his hand up. Gerald, do you want to ask your question?
I just want to let you know that I'm on the Montgomery County Planning Board. And the reason can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, the reason I wanted to understand, I've lived in the area 51 years. It's growing. We are in the process of a big Senator Carter master plan amendment of mine. So in terms of your aggregate group, you may want to, from time to time, contact or be following the planning board, what we're doing in the area. I wanted to point that out. The other thing was that I personally went to Northeastern in a co-op work program, which I found to be very helpful, where the university did get you a job in your field. And if you were doing well, I was actually hired after my graduation at the company I was working. So that's a program that really could support your effort. Montgomery College as well, at a 2-year level, people get recruited there and they ship them to the West Coast. There's a lot of potential in Silver Spring from a medical standpoint. So those are two things to consider. And I just wanted to let you know that we are looking at, and also on diversity, we're into the process, what's called Thrive 2050, what the county will look like in 2050. So we're doing that on an incremental basis. But I would suggest that you do stay in touch with our master plan minor adjustments in the Great Seneca Science Corridor. I just want to make that point. So, and very educational. I learned some things that I didn't know at this point. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Gerald. That's terrific connection to the master planning. And also the question you raised too about the co-ops. Maybe we can pivot on to that question with our panel members. There's also somebody who's asked it in the chat, how important a studentship or an internship or a co-op is in drawing talent into the company and possibly hiring. Aaron or Brian, you want to take that?
I'm happy to. I mean, I would say it's absolutely critical. It's another means of kind of getting a supply of good talent who in a lower risk environment you can try out. But also I'll take it from I have a son who's an engineering student in college. He needs to get experience what it's like working in a company to understand what he wants to do ultimately. And so I want, and I think a lot of sometimes companies are a little myopic and they'll say, oh, well, we don't have a plan, but if someone wants to hire an intern, if someone wants to hire a co-op, we'll let them. But I've worked for companies that did a really tremendous job of having a planned approach where we said, we're going to have X number of roles every year, always make sure they're filled. It always, and it even go into, I will say, almost not directly budgeted into particular departments, budgeted centrally, and then even into early phase, first couple years in the workforce, where it's allowing us to train people up, create some demand, if you will, for people to be interested in us and see that that's an opportunity, generate some interest, but also allow us to train people. And I know Joe had a thing in there. Those kind of studentships, co-ops, internships is great because we try each other out. It's a lower risk environment where we're bringing people in. It's not quite your temp to perm approach, which doesn't seem to be in vogue anymore, but it does allow us to put someone in a position where we can train them and they can show us what they can do, and then make a decision whether it makes sense for that to be a little bit more commitment in that relationship. So I'm all for it, and I feel it's absolutely a critical part of any company like ours talent management strategy.
Thanks. Brian, do you have any thoughts?
I think I got nothing more to say beyond what Aaron did. I think you nailed it.
So I'm gonna exercise one prerogative of being able to ask the questions and ask a question that's not in the chat. We've been talking a lot about training in the GMP space and what it takes to develop this talent. I'm wondering about research in this space. And one of the conversations we've been having here at Shady Grove is how we can give our students more research experience to help prepare them for industry as well. And I'm wondering what kinds of research is important for students to have. Are there particular areas of research experience that would be beneficial for students looking to go into biomanufacturing? And more specifically, is there a need for research around the question of scaling itself and the question of manufacturing itself, and research in that area that could be beneficial?
Yeah, I'll start, I guess. So obviously we're focused on manufacturing here. So research in itself tends to be managed separately for manufacturing. If you're talking about scalability or process development or tech transfer, those types of things, that tends to be driven more out of the process development R&D groups. More so the manufacturing itself, we tend to be the receiving side of those things. But I will say, as I think Molly alluded to earlier, there are groups such as manufacturing sciences groups and those types of groups who will work at a manufacturing site. And their job is to look for process improvements and to help perform investigations where we have an excursion or deviation or something from an expected process or expected result. And so in those areas within the manufacturing environment, that's where you start to see that type of mindset become valuable, because they're not necessarily on the floor being a manufacturing tech, but they're working in a lab. So for example, at the Kite site here, we built ourselves a nice manufacturing sciences and manufacturing support lab where we can replicate what's going on the floor. We can try to see if we can't repeat problems. We know how to resolve them or correct them, those types of things. And so having an understanding, technical understanding of the process then becomes more important in that situation, where you need to have a more in-depth understanding of engineering or science, whatever the expertise is, for that particular process. But I think in those environments, there's some value there. Of course, manufacturing itself, not as much. We're there to be repeatable and execute over and over and over and over and save as many patients' lives as we can. And then the MS&T group or inside group, depending what you want to call it, they're there really to help us with process improvements and efficiencies and those types of things.
Yeah, I'd echo what Brian said. Obviously, manufacturing be different from PD research. I would say if someone's in basic sciences, anything in terms of analytical method development, T-cell engineering work, viral vector engineering work, you'll have a job. You'll have 5 offers the second you graduate with whatever level degree you get. But I think so from a basic science research, and I don't see it so much for us. But the place where I think academia can help a little bit more on the manufacturing shop floor is kind of in the industrial engineering and kind of operations management place. And that's one place that I have seen prior company. We were working with a professor or a researcher over at I think they were at the University College of London, and they were dealing with a lot of the same problems we were in terms of capacity planning for autologous cell therapy, and that was their area of expertise. And so we had some conversations when we were looking at our planning processes of what she had been learning and what she had found. So I do think that there's an area for that, but I think it gets lost sometimes when we talk life sciences. We think only life sciences on the research and academia side. But when it comes to manufacturing, it's more of your, as I said, it's more of your industrial engineering and operations management support that could be a real value to us.
Thanks, that's really helpful. Marty, I think we've covered a lot of the topics in the chat. Why don't I hand it back to you and see if you have a wrap-up question for everybody?
Well, so Anne, before I get to the wrap-up question for our panelists, I have a question that I would like to ask you. We talked to the panelists about their view of the importance of communication between industry and academia. You're a leader in academia. What's your view on the importance of that communication?
I think it's fundamental, and I think we have so much room for growth in this area, Marty. I think that there's a kind of traditional relationship that has been a little bit of a stiff arm distance. I think industry has a real need and a real desire to have, looking at the talent they need and is looking to academia and saying, this is what we need. In academia, it's not that straightforward. You have different talent areas. There's a lot of accreditation issues about what courses are offered and when they're offered. Those degree programs are highly regulated by the states where they're located. You need to have the talent on your team. You need to have the budget. There's legacy issues. So the ability of academia sometimes to respond really quickly to those things is a challenge. And I think there's room in a place like Shady Grove where this kind of collaboration can be fostered more, and that kind of communication can be much more direct. You see it already in the programs that are offered here, the TLST program, the biological sciences, the biocomputational engineering. These programs have been developed with a lot of communication and direct connection with industry, trying to understand what the needs are, looking at the long term as well as the short term. So I think there needs to be a more natural way to facilitate this input. And it's not so much as always just necessarily meeting whatever it is that industry needs or getting academia to do something. I think there's a lot of room for the creative impulse to take hold here and to be thinking, especially what I've heard here today is the importance of career readiness, the importance of creativity, the importance of deep entrepreneurial thinking. It's not only about the skill sets, but it's about the ability to cross disciplines and the ability to collaborate and to work with teams and to problem solve. And I think that kind of collaboration between industry and academia can really foster those kinds of skill sets in a wonderful way. So yes, absolutely, it can be improved. And I think there's great things ahead in that relationship.
Thank you. So Aaron and Brian, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. We've talked a lot about workforce development, the people that you're recruiting, their education. If you could go back in time, we started this conversation talking about yourself and your pathway to get to where you are. If you could go back in time and talk to your younger self in college and give your younger self a piece of advice about the college education that you're embarking on, that maybe you didn't get and wished you had, what would that be? What didn't you get from college that you wished you had? I'll give you just a second to think about it, and then
Yeah,
Aaron, Brian, you
yeah, I'll start and give everyone a chance to think about it. So I think for me, all right, so context. So I went to Indiana University of Bloomington. I grew up in the Midwest, and I had a biochemistry degree as my undergrad, and then went back later to Purdue for a graduate degree in engineering, and then actually went to Hopkins a few years back to get MBE program there. I think so. When I think about my undergrad, I think the main thing was, I learned the science and all that. That was great, really good, but I didn't know the first thing about how to, I'll say survive or to thrive in a corporate environment, right? So I didn't know anything about thinking about budgets or corporate responsibility, any of those kind of things. I had no concept of it. And so I think given where I am now, would it have sped me along? Maybe not. I don't know. That's probably not really the point. But it would help me be more well-rounded coming out of school and more ready to tackle different opportunities than what I was when I came out.
Great. Aaron, how about you?
Yeah, mine. I think what I would say. So I went to University of Pennsylvania and I studied mechanical engineering. And I always joke, when I first got to school, I thought I was gonna go design cars, and then you realize mechanical engineers don't get to design cars. That's what industrial designers do. Mechanical engineers get to design wiring harnesses that that don't break and cost pennies. So that really wasn't my thing. But the most important experience in college for me was an internship at Procter & Gamble, working in packaging development out in Cincinnati, Ohio. And it completely changed my perspective on what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to do more research. I thought, I never thought of manufacturing, but my world was turned on its head. And so you ask what I do differently. It's what I recommend to my son when he said he wanted to be an engineer, and his engineering degree program has a manufacturing specialization. And I looked at him and I said, if you took these 4 classes, anyone in my position would hire you, because you'll have skills that I had to get, years of working in industry. So I think that's what I would have said. I think I would have recommended Marty going back and getting that experiential learning earlier. Just because you have no idea, what the world is really like. We can all go to middle schools and high schools and explain to people, but until someone has actually kind of sat in the shoes of an engineer or a manufacturing technician or a researcher, they don't really know. So I would say that to any and all students, the more experiential learning that you can experience earlier, the better. It'll help craft kind of your career path. But I will say, I don't second guess anything. I'm lucky. I am where I am because of the experiences I had, and it's fun to be able to tell people I used to make baby shampoo. But man, it would have helped my employers a little bit, save a little bit of money in training and developing me too. So
that's great. Well, we're down to the final minute. I'll just quickly say that I wished I'd learned more about the value of stock options at an earlier age. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marty. Marty, what a terrific job you did tonight hosting this. Thank you so much. It was so enjoyable. And Brian and Aaron and Molly, who has had to leave us a little bit early, thank you. The insights, the conversation, just fantastic. Such a learning opportunity. We really appreciate you being here. And we can't wait for you to come to campus, and we'll give you a full-fledged tour of the BSC and the rest of the campus as well. So look forward to seeing you. Let me just say that USG is on the threshold of really developing some life sciences talent development pipelines, and we've got some great programs already in place that are really growing and thriving, and we hope to do more. There's lots of ways that everybody can get involved with your companies, internships for students, paid and unpaid, educational partnerships with capstone courses, even giving scholarships and sponsorships and program investment. So I hope if anybody on this call tonight, and if you're interested in getting more involved, you can reach out to John Zucknick. He's our Director of Economic Development, and his information will be on the closing slide. So I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure to have you here, and hope you have some great takeaways, and hope you have a great evening. Thank you.